Hello, African world. Welcome to the Cosmic Cowrie Shellcast, episode 6, Us versus STEM, which also happens to be the first episode we recorded, so you may notice some awkward edits or out-of-date references. Thank you for your support. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, comment, and enjoy the episode. Hello, African world. Welcome to the Cosmic Cowrie Shellcast, world building, pop culture, sci-fi, fantasy discussion, and review from a revolutionary Pan-African socialist perspective. I'm your host, Sir Junior, and tonight I am joined by Sasha.
Hello.
And Aroma.
Evening.
Tonight is episode 1, Us versus STEM, Fugitive Science or Black Excellence, where we discuss what it looks like to use technology in service of Black liberation or in service to our oppressors. First, as always, we're going to do a check-in question, and let's start with, folks, what is something that is created by a Black person? Black creative media, so that could be film, it could be a book you're reading, a game you're playing. What is something that you're getting into right now? And Sasha, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Something I've recently been reading is Zombies, an anthropological investigation of the living dead. So this is like a actual fiction ethnography book. It's by Philippe Charlier in Haiti. He's like investigating people's narratives about zombies and like going more into that, all of the culture around that. So it's very interesting.
Nice, that's what's up. You said that it's Felipe. What was the name of that author?
It's Philippe, like Philippe, and then Charlier, I think, which is like Charlier.
So probably really getting into Vodun and the Haitian kind of tradition of zombies and that whole thing. Very cool.
Yeah, it's talking about like some medicines and like this specific fish that is used in the creation of like poison that is used in order to turn people to zombies. It's very interesting. Like, yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's what's up.
In fiction, this chair, I need to get rid of it. It's positioned like a fiction story.
Well, yeah, it's an ethnography. So he is like giving accounts of people in Haiti who have experienced like zombies, who like accounts of people who have witnessed like their family members dying, and then like seeing them one day just like out in public, just like cold-eyed, not recognizing them. He talks with like some like voodoo priests, like called bokors, just kind of like getting the gist from them, or like whatever stories they have to share. But yeah.
Oh, just stories of people who like experience this in real time.
Yes,
pseudo realistic. Okay, that's interesting. I definitely need to pick that up.
Yeah.
I don't watch any zombie media. I've had a fear since I was a little kid, but that I might pick up and take a read.
Yeah, I would recommend it. It's pretty interesting.
Aroma, what about you?
There's actually a book. I think it's behind me. It's this book here, Crazy as Hell, which is just like little bits of Black history so that I'm freshening up on it, so that when I do get into my history courses, I have quick things to give to people when school starts again. So I'm just rereading. It's by Reginald Dwayne Betts. It's like, it's not a full, it's like little bits of Black history. It's not like a book, like a finish to read. It's more like, this is what happened. This is examples of Black priesthood. This is examples of Black like revolution. This is examples of Black. It actually has a lot of Black excellence in the book for our topic. So this is the not caught up on Black media. I was kind of caught off. So unfortunately, I'm not reading like a ton of Black media right now, just because we're in a Euro state. Passive media is usually white. But
yeah, and so
that's something.
Like, that's
what I got for now.
That's an older book, right?
Yeah, this is definitely something I got off of like my dad's bookshelf and started reading when I was, the first time I read it, I think it was 17 years old.
What's the significance of the title? They're crazy as hell.
Just the Black experience there's so much more than that's been like talked about. Like, it's not just Dr. King and Malcolm X. There's so many different examples of like the true, even stories that we've heard before, like the lady who was the dark-skinned teenager who was the first person to sit down on the bus, and why Rosa Parks was chosen over her, because she just wasn't in purity politics and what people wanted. So it's crazy just to say that like it's been chaotic and it hasn't been like uniform in terms of Black history.
Very cool. Yeah, that's neat. I like this whole conversation lately on sanity, like the sanity of our environment, or challenging the sanity of our environment, like this capitalist structure, white supremacy culture, white domination, and how oftentimes Black folks have been labeled as crazy or insane, or drapetomania is a good example. For just wanting to be outside of that. So yeah, that kind of caught my interest. Very cool. And
it's interesting to like define what crazy is, because as I know, I think crazy is out of the norm. So what do you do when the norm of society is something kind of predatory and self-destructive, and you're like, I don't want to be predatory and self-destructive? Are you by definition crazy? Is the system you're in at large crazy? It's like a question to be asked. Like, who is crazy a number game, or is it a basic morality game?
Very cool. So I have been, let's see, Black creator. What have I been doing lately? Playing Cyberpunk. So I got into, I'm starting to build a gaming channel and starting to like get into looking at like streaming and kind of just making gaming more of my creative space and all of that. And one of them I started playing was Cyberpunk 2077. And so it's an Xbox, PS5, PC game set in like the cyberpunk genre. So think Blade Runner, Dark City, somewhat like Cowboy Bebop. And you're in this, what they call the dark future. It's kind of controlled by corporations. Yet there are there's folks who are artists, who are fixers, people who are nomads that are trying to like both get by and possibly break down some of this corporate and capitalist control. And I didn't realize it when I started playing the video game that it was based on it was a Black creator. Like, I knew that Cyberpunk 2020 was a tabletop RPG. Yeah,
I didn't know that. 2027. I thought it was a new concept altogether.
Yeah. So I knew about the RPG, yet as nerdy as I am, I never got into tabletop RPGs when I was like in high school or anything like that. Definitely a space that was dominated by like kind of like crappy white people to be around in those days, and it was hard to find folks who would even invite you into something like that, I think, as a Black person. Yet the RPG space, and that has been something I'm like looking into through Cyberpunk, so that's been cool. And my brothers talked about, oh, hey, maybe we'll try to do a game. And yeah, maybe that's something that will come up later on the show. That could be fun to do an RPG campaign.
think we might have it. So sorry. Let me is there any way to pause? I just want to switch this chair out so every time I move, it's not like an old bone. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I think we should do is anybody can cut. If we clap, it makes a blip on the audio. So you can actually see when the cut happened without you can just look at the audio stream. We would always do that on our old podcast.
Okay.
It helps to remember. I'll remember though.
Oh, I can move. I was just the antique chair. I thought it looked good in the background, but you can't really see it anyway. So I'm like, might as well. Why am I killing myself for this?
Yeah, I had a bunch of stuff like that, like backdrop stuff, where I was like, man, this is not.
Yeah. It took me so long to my house is shaped weird, so I was trying to find a corner that would look good, that could be compact because everything has corners, and I didn't want it to just be randomly my couch or randomly my TV. So I was just let me find a nice little area in my house I can control.
I like print too.
Right, I literally just grabbed this from my parents. They're like, you want it? I'm
That's how it works. So today's episode, Us versus STEM, Fugitive Science or Black Excellence. I actually have some books behind me that somewhat might illustrate about how we got into this topic. The concept of fugitive science is coined by Britt Russer, and basically the idea that we have kind of our whole structure in this culture has been our structure and system of science is based in scientific racism. I know that Ibram Kendi and STEM from the beginning has done a lot of good research on Newton, the concept of light and its origins and racism. I think some of us are familiar with scientific racism and what's that thing, the study of the skull, the shape of the skull.
What is it? Phrenology?
Phrenology, the shape of the skulls. And when you look at the way that the Black women have been experimented on to develop, these different systems and sciences, this Tuskegee experiment. So so much of our science is based on racism, and Britt Russer and some other Black scholars like James B. Hale have started to talk about fugitive science and the technologies of freedom. What are ways that Black people have used their genius, used our kind of scientific, our cultures, the legacies that we have within our own spaces to both resist this scientific racism and our oppression, and how has that been a driver of the actual scientific achievements that we have. So I think within that topic, there's, we could get into a lot. We could talk about our, so we'll talk about examples from comic books, movies that we have from history. We'll talk about what are some ways that if you're a writer, what are some ways that you might show what does fugitive science look like versus just showing the norm, what we usually get, which is people going along with their oppressors. So let's get into it. And
so I think one question we could start with the validity. I think one question we could start with is our own personal idea of the validity of STEM in real life. What do we think Black people in STEM, is that something that we should strive for? Is it neutral? Is it just something that happens? Or is it something that we're we need, if we're going to have a standard revolution, if we're going to have it, we need scientists and engineers, things of that nature. I guess I'll say my take on it first. I don't know if we need, I think it would help. There's no, of course, smart people would help. But I don't think the Black Revolution is going to be invented by someone inventing a new type of laser, and that's what gets us a revolution. I think the technology that we have is what's going to be, or whatever technology is available is going to aid or hurt the revolution either way. So I think philosophers, maybe I'm just biased because I'm going into philosophy and I'm trying to get a job, but I think philosophers in the Black community will be more needed because we need people to convince others and charisma. Like every great, you don't like Oppenheimer created the nuclear bomb, but who was it? Who dropped it? Eisenhower? Not Eisenhower. Who was the president who dropped the nukes?
Oh wow. Yeah.
Nixon?
Oh, that's right.
I don't
Oh,
know.
no.
No, it was way after Nixon. I think it was Eisenhower.
Wasn't Eisenhower? I should know this.
I also should know this on
Yeah,
history.
But should we though? Like, that's the other thing.
Yes. It was Eisenhower. I'll go ahead and say a president.
Yeah, keep going.
It was a charismatic president that
Truman.
ordered it to be dropped. So like the charisma is what makes movements. And I think STEM just ends up like any scientist or engineer, as society is now, just end up being another tool for whatever regime is being pushed at the time. That was a lengthy explanation, but that's my own point of STEM in the real world.
Yeah, I hear you. My whole thing is that like, I see that we need to like deconstruct our idea of who is like allowed to do science. So like, it right now, like there's an idea that you need to go through all of these, merit-based like types of initiations or whatever, school basically, and be in academia in order to like call yourself a scientist or call yourself doing science. And I feel like that really like puts a stop to experimentation that can, be useful to the revolution. So that's kind of like the standpoint that I'm having about this concept that like deinstitutionalizing or like decolonializing science means recognizing that science is like a way of knowing things and gathering information and like way of like testing and experimenting with our reality, and that we can all do that, and that we're all like intellectual beings, and that we need to kind of have a reconceptualization of it in order to take back like the intellectual energy that has been captivated or captured by the colonial institutions,
I definitely go ahead. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So like Aroma, like to your point, like I think you're right that science in and of itself won't save us. I think that's like a huge point. Like science by itself is not going to free us from liberation because it really is about who is using it. People and how we use science is really what it comes down to. And then I think, I kind of build on Sasha's point just about kind of decoupling the idea of science and like the scientific method is like what you're talking about. So like empiricism, right? I'm the non-college person in this group, so sometimes y'all are gonna have to like catch me on my terms. But so like empiricism and decoupling that from this idea of kind of like white civilization and this myth of white people having the most superior civilization. Like, I think that's huge. The term organic intellectual is used for people who like come out of the ghetto or come out of like a poor area and are not, and like supposedly just like teach themselves everything. I actually really hate that term because somebody called me that once and I was like, I'm a product of homeschooling. Like my parents were educators. Like I'm a product of the Black, tradition of teaching, which is real. It's there. To your point, like Sasha, like it isn't something that is like, it's not, they don't have monopoly on intelligence and on the method. And I think that's huge.
I think the monopoly they do hold is literally like the piece of paper and the verification and the validation, whatever the word. I'm spacing on words today, but being able to validate certain sciences and say, oh, this guy's right, this guy's wrong. And I think that does two things. I think to Sasha's point, it controls who gets to be a scientist, and B, you get to filter and throw in as many ideas as you can into the scientists. Like if you want to go to school for science, you do have to take like a political science class, you have to take a history class. And, it's when you go to, if you're going to Harvard, the oldest school that's been here since chattel slavery, like it's been here for hundreds of thousands, well, not hundreds of thousands, hundreds of years. Oxford has also been here for hundreds of years. And then you also have the newer schools, MIT, which are producing all these Silicon Valleys. There's a bunch of ideas being thrown into the scientist's brain so that they don't necessarily revolt, or maybe they don't create fugitive science and they do stick to the status quo because this is what they've been taught, while also being taught the method of science, which could also be warped in a kind of way. So I think on top of making sure that their people are the ones who are the scientists, I think they also are like, just in case a Black or any color does get through, let's make sure that they share our values.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I kind of want to jump on or kind of close or add to this at this point about like kind of give a historical example. So have you all heard of Henry Box Brown? So this was the enslaved guy who shipped himself in a box to free himself from slavery. Like he, I think it was Philadelphia, shipped himself to Philadelphia. And it's this like story where he gets there, he jumps out of the box, he like says a psalm, and basically like spends the rest of his life going on like these tours. Like he would travel around doing like kind of recreating. He created this whole like actual set, like an on stage like contraption that recreated his travel and like his journey in the box and all of that stuff. And so the way that it's told to us is like he just did it out of desperation. Like even the way he tells the story is like, I just decided to get in a box for like 12 hours. And somehow I had enough oxygen, and by the grace of God, I just survived. And so Hale's point, and his point about technologies of freedom, is that we have to actually challenge Box's narrative and say like that probably isn't exactly all that happened. Like because of how remarkable it was of what he did, like he had to stay still for basically almost an entire day. He had to control his breathing somehow, get oxygen somehow in this box being transported like in the mail. And he never explains how he did that, where he learned any of that stuff from. He never explains like any of his background for like how he did it. And that is kind of like, so his point is that basically our ancestors had ways of resisting, had scientific methods, had like secret kind of skills that they were passing around, and contortionism and things like that. The ability to kind of like control your breathing, and even constructing these like boxes. That was something they were basically hiding from our oppressors, and that instead of looking at it as like essentially this like fanciful story, we should actually look at it as a technology of freedom. And so like when I was reading through the Underground Railroad book, the 1872 book by William Still, there's multiple people who did that. William Still says that Henry Box Brown was just one of many people who used that same method. Frederick Douglass later says that he was upset with Box because him telling people how it was done meant that other Black people had to like couldn't use it as a way to escape. So, later Box travels around. He kind of gets into mysticism and electromagnetic theory and all of this stuff that was happening in the 1800s, and none of that stuff makes it into the Black History Month kind of roundup of stories that we tell. And his role as kind of like a thinker, an inventor, anything like that is like completely obscured. So yeah, that's one scientific example. And yeah, go ahead, Sasha. It looks like you're about to jump in.
Yeah, I didn't hear about like people shipping themselves in the mail, like until the interview that he had done a bit ago. Um, yeah, it is interesting to think about, but I didn't have a specific.
Yeah, yeah. So like to your point, like to your earlier point about who is allowed to do science, who's allowed to be a genius,
Mhm.
and I definitely think that kind of sums it up. So what would it look like to us, like for folks to develop science for use against their oppressors? Like, what are some ways that building off of Max Brown, technologies of freedom, like what would that look like? And do we have some examples of it, we think?
I don't really can't think of an example, but some fantastical idea I've always thought of is like a separate grid. Like you go to a black neighborhood and you cut off that black neighborhood from the electrical grid and you make it just based off of like whatever generator or something you have. And that way, it would give you some hidden things like what people are doing in there and where energy is going. But it would also take away one of the like biggest benefits to like the larger system at large away and allowed us to be self-sufficient in a way. And I know that this is, like Wakanda. Like that's basically what the whole country of Wakanda did. Their whole thing was based off of vibranium, and so they're not using the wires, all the giant wires under the sea. They have no connection to that. They're not using it, and yet they still get internet. They still get everything that they need through their own technology. I think the first thing technology would have to do wouldn't even necessarily be like a big gun or a weapon of some kind, or even like some kind of fantastical machine. It would be a way to remove us from the masses, like a way to clean our own water, a way to control our own airspace, a way to just have our own autonomy as a people in the country, in the world.
Yes, I hear you. I think it's important too to reframe it that like we have always like been a part of the earth too, and we have had these ways we've like lived, and it was with colonialism and like the events of like this, of this colonial project that we have become separated from it and think that there's only like one channel to go down, and like have kind of like having to be like in the workforce and stuff and like participate in stuff is a distraction from like just getting back to that place where we're not like in this like idea that something is scarce, or that like we can only like, for example, get electricity through the power company or whatever.
Yeah, I think definitely go ahead. I was going to say that, like, I definitely think it's important to, like, and I just caught myself saying it, to remember that we were interacting and were surviving before these power grids, like, you're definitely right about that. And I even remember, like, my uncle, he told me of this Nigerian way of thinking of just, I don't remember the name of it, but it was like, I have something, I have extra, I'm just going to give it to you and you'll do the same for me. Like if I'm a farmer and I have extra crops, I'll give you extra crops. If you're a shoe worker, you'll make me shoes. And you'll just do that because we all understand that we're here in a society and that we need to, that no one person can, even if they had all the skills, do everything themselves. And that idea has been grossly perverted and reimagined and just completely destroyed and repurposed in a capitalistic, Eurocentric society. And so that's just,
the idea that, the colonial idea that has created like all of this, that we don't even realize that we have enough and like we have more than enough, property, like the idea that if I have extra, then I'm gonna like sell it, you know, that someone owns the power generation or whatever, the land, you know.
Yeah, even like the, just like you said, the idea that if there's a little bit extra, like you capitalize on that. You basically make sure that you sell the extra at a high price to somebody else instead of that round robin mutual exchange that like the Nigerians practice. And yeah, I think that like it really is it would start with the need to kind of recognize like that that scarcity is fake. Scarcity is like a kind of a capitalist myth. um yeah, I think like how we ultimately used science to improve things would really count on tearing down capitalism. So you mentioned Wakanda. I think like, so I had it in here in my notes to ask in this episode, like which side does Wakanda fall on? You know, we have some ideas of what future science might look like, yet we haven't talked as much about Black excellence, and yet I think there are some elements that Wakanda does express, like fugitive science or technologies of freedom, and then there's other ways where they seem to be, at least in the Marvel MCU, the Marvel like cinematic universe, slightly more like an example of Black excellence. Like, what do you all think?
100%. Black Wakanda in the MCU is Black excellence, especially in the second movie where like they were blatantly attacked, and they're like, "We're going to show you. We're going to bring them here without hurting them, so that we can show you that we're better and we're turning the other cheek." And so, like, I think Wakanda, and even in Marvel comics, it's not as revolutionary as I would like it. It's more revolutionary. Like they are like Black Panther usually keeps it to his chest. He doesn't share as much, and when he does share, it's like share this vibranium like arrow, one vibranium arrow, because we need it before the world blows up. But he's pretty stingy with it in the comics, which is what I would prefer. But yeah, I definitely think that Wakanda lends to Black excellence, which is like, look how shiny Super Africa could look. Like that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, and like maybe let's expand on like when we say Black excellence, because there's probably people in the audience who be like, wait, I'm mad. Like Black excellence is good. Like I like my nice suit and I like my nice, so basically like to me, Black excellence is the tendency for our current culture to focus on Black achievement in white controlled spaces as Black excellence. So, you know, that whole thing of when we do something for the first time, you know, we should understand it's not the first like time that we've been able to do it. It's just the first time we've been let in the door. And we've gone back to like celebrating those firsts in a way that is like, oh, well, like Black excellence in the Olympics. You know, let's just be proud that there's a Black person who can run, who's the fastest runner in the world. Let's not worry about what country they're representing or, you know, what ideology they have. Like, let's just root for anybody Black, and because they're achieving something. Like, I think that has to our show's like related to the show, like STEM has a strong Black excellence like element that we are, the memes of like, oh, this like young Black kid went to Harvard, that's Black excellence, like that is actually bad. Like Harvard, like,
right, like what do we want to do? What do we want with Harvard? Like the Harvard was 2 years ago being like, oh, it's like, well, not 2 years ago, but like slavery, and they bent the knee to Trump. Like as soon as Trump got elected, they got rid of all their DEI programs and all of their specific. So I'm like, why do you want in there? You know, it's almost like in high school, you're trying. I want to go to the cool kids table. Like they don't respect you, and if they do, and if they feign to respect you, that's not something you really want. And so, I personally, and I think that not only can we talk about Black excellence, we can also talk about the difference between pro-Black and Pan-Africanness. And to me personally, pro-Black was like any Black person is doing something, yeah, or not even any Black person doing anything, but like I'm pro-Black person no matter what. Versus Pan-African, I'm pro the betterment of the Pan-African Black agenda. Like I want Black people to be better as a whole versus just this Black guy did something great. Yay. Like it just, to me, Black excellence, pro-Black, that it was good. It was needed at a time. I don't want to fully like throw away Black excellence because I think that some people do that at a time. I do think that Black excellence was needed back in Jim Crow, back when there was like a fight and a struggle and, a dog war just to get anything done. And we were like, we're here, we're trapped here. We wanted to move away. We've been tricked. We've been trapped here. Let's try to do what we can so we're not being lynched and killed in the street. And I think at that time period, Black excellence was something to be celebrated. Like a Black person made it through this racist system and got something. And usually they would reach back and help others after they got to this point. And was like, I'm the first Black library owner, and I'm going to have Black books. I'm going to hire Black children. But it seems to have gone from that to just a label that you throw on yourself. I'm the first Black, whatever, time for me to integrate into white society. But I do think that at some point, Black excellence was something to be cheered on, but that time has passed.
Yeah. I think, I agree. Like, we need to reconceptualize our idea of success and not be so like tied up in being recognized by white institutions, and like, Black institutions that are really like derived out of just the same like colonial institution. And also like thinking about like when it was good, like when pro-Blackness was more of a, I guess, motivating or like celebratory thing, maybe we can think of it too, like in that time, there was the means of production was more tied up in institutions that we didn't have like a lot of control over. And right now too, like with all, like everything is exponential right now, right? Like with digital, like space and like the internet, even like, generative AI, all this stuff that's going on. It feels like things are a lot more freed up, and that it's an ample time for us to just like stop being so caught up and being recognized, and just like, recognize that we can do everything that we need to do for our life, and that we don't need to strive to just like be close to the oppressor. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think like that point of this being an opportunity, I think is really important. Like, in times of plague, in times of political upheaval, like that's when many times like oppressed groups find ways to get ahead in history. So I do actually agree with you that like this is a key time for us to really look at that. I was just gonna say too, like that Black excellence idea is it's recurring in our kind of culture and Black culture, like the talented 10, the concept of Black uplift from the Nation of Islam. Like we have had like we keep going back to this idea that to like show our humanity, we have to prove something to them, to like, and we really just, like you said, it's not sure we need to get away from it. It's a distraction. It's one of the like key elements of our oppression, I think. And yeah, I think that Black excellence is like, I do like when I see that somebody does something that's really awesome when it's Black. Like I follow this guy on Instagram, Nature Jab, that is making plastic out of fuel.
I remember that guy.
Fuel out of plastic, excuse me. So yeah, you follow that guy too? Or you heard of him?
Yeah.
Yeah, like very cool, like really awesome. And I hope that he understands like he doesn't have to sell out to the oppressor. But so yeah, like I like to see Black people do that stuff. That's like it's intelligent, yet and it just shows like our dynamism and whatnot. Yet the part about us going to work for MIT for one of these arms companies, like no, I can't celebrate that. So yeah, that's our Oh, go ahead.
I wanted to like even to go back to Wakanda and like Black Panther, T'Challa. If you compare him, like his like the story is the same as Iron Man. If you think about it, like the money wise, things of that nature, he's a genius, and his Black Panther, T'Challa's all of his resources are withheld. He doesn't try to grow. He doesn't try to build. He just has it and like kind of hoards it within his own country. And if he does give it out, white people, he gives it out to the people. Like I either hoard it for myself or I give it out to society at large. And this kind of conversation is never give it out to Black people. Now, admittedly, you could say that Iron Man does the same thing, but Iron Man is a white man who's already taken over the world. So him giving out to a society is him giving to, you know, his own people. Like America rules the world, and America is the global superpower, and before America it was Britain. So anything he gives to the world gets given to the white people first. And I mean, we can kind of compare that to the idea like there's 14 Black billionaires in the US, and we are still in a racist country. We're still destitute, and we don't see that money being repurposed into the Black community almost ever. And if it is, it's a tax write-off. It's not for actual, you know, building. 9 times out of 10. I'm sure there's some ventures that have been genuinely helpful, but the basics is tax write-off and hoard.
Yeah, I just actually like Wakanda definitely is, I would say, way more Black excellence. I mean, like, so the beginning of the movie with Killmonger's father, like, flat out says that he's trying to take the Wakanda technology to help Black people, and just confronts him. And it's like, dude, these people over here are just like us. There are people, and they're being oppressed. They have no leadership that can protect them. Like, and this is like right after, you can kind of see, like, he's got the Black Panther poster. It's the 70s. It's like the 80s. So this is Black Liberation Army. People are getting assassinated, have gotten assassinated. Asada's getting exiled to Cuba. All this shit's going down. And like, we need a shirt that's Njobu was right. Like this, and really not Killmonger was right. Njobu was right. Like, that's what the Wakandans should have been doing. They should have been helping the Black diaspora. That's just how I feel about it. So yeah, I think, like, to your point, like, that would have been, you're right. Like, when they help the world, when they help people, they kind of help the world instead of what Njobu wanted, which is just like focus on the diaspora.
And maybe make Black people, like, maybe you don't have to hoard it because it was like a fantastical device. So I'm not saying keep all the vibranium for ourselves and flip the table, like Black people take over and we're the world superpower. I would love that, but I don't know if that's everybody's position. So like, at least give Black people like some sovereignty, you know, get every oppressor out of the country, have Africa deal with its own issues, maybe create a Africana version of the EU, you know, like you have a magical rock. I don't think that would be hard. And once the sovereignty of African people is in place and Black people's oppression is no longer like just every major country's main product, then you can say, okay, now we can help the world. Now we can innovate the world after Black people are saved. But it seems like it's like, it's the idea of lead by example that I've always hated, that a lot of Black media does. Like, oh, we can't be like them. We have to lead by example. We'll help everybody, and maybe they'll share their resources too. Give them more. Give white people more resources. Maybe they'll learn if they have 100. Maybe they'll share if they have $1 trillion instead of $1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that's insane at this point. Like,
yeah, it's expecting the same result for sure. Yeah, like, so before I forget, an example of Black excellence is Dyson, the character Dr. Dyson from Terminator 2. So he's the Black scientist that ends up creating Skynet. And I've always like thought, like, in their universe, when he was getting all the awards and like creating Skynet, they were probably cheering that guy on. Like the Black community was probably like, this is Black excellence, a guy who has created this powerful AI, and rather than use it to help Black people or improve the world, he sold it to the military. I think the latter half of the show, and I will talk about Ironheart, which is a whole Black excellence project, in my opinion. I think one of the questions I did want to, maybe this is our last question, or if y'all want to keep chopping it up, that's cool. Kind of would using science for our liberation require the destruction of the status quo? Like, if Black people were to start, sending all of our kids to HBCUs that were like ideologically sound, we were to start like building up our own tech, building up, trading with African nations to get minerals out of the ground, just only working with each other. Would that require would we be able to do that on our own? Or would that just be like instantly confronting the status quo? What do you all think?
That idea, like the examples that you gave, I don't think that is actually confronting the status quo. Like, I think that's just like doing the Black version of colonialism. But your question, can you restate it?
Well, yeah, build on that. I think that I think we should control the minerals in Africa. I don't think we should mine them the same way. I think that we should control our resources.
What do we need the minerals for?
I think if we use them for quite a bit. Like, there's medical tools, there's like anything, lenses, anything like that. Use find minerals for. I think there's a way to. I absolutely think there is a way to use the resources of the earth in a way that is non-colonial or non-capitalist, because I think people were doing that before, like we were talking about earlier. Here on this continent, the Native Americans used fire burning for hundreds of years safely before this kind of like our advent of screwing up crops to cause
and it was in a like cyclical like process that
so that's what I mean. Like, imagine that we would control the minerals and diamonds coming out of Rwanda, and instead of like mining them to extinction and using child labor, we're pulling them out and using them for something good. So that's kind of what I mean. Like, would that
I asked that
we would have to confront the system?
Okay, sorry. Do you want to repeat that? Because I was talking over you.
Yeah, just like, would that mean that we had to confront the system if we started to do these things for ourselves?
So I had asked like, what do we need the minerals for? Because the other thing that I think about is that like we have these ideas of like how the world works and like how we need certain resources for a particular thing, but also this is like a construct of like the world that we're living in already. So I asked that because like extraction is seen as like one of the only ways right now in this paradigm, in the colonial paradigm, to like get resources. And even the idea of resources and like it having to come from like this pool where you like take things from the earth instead of it just being like a part of the way that we live, because we are part of the earth, we are the earth. I think that is like kind of the framing too that needs to like be deconstructed and reframed and rebuilt in a way so that we're like living in a way that's integrated with the earth rather than like trying to use it. Is that like where I'm coming from?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that one, there should be a new way of thinking about the earth, how we should be integrated in it. But I also think that we would 100% need to confront the status quo. I don't think, I mean, like every country that has power now has some kind of colony or some resource gathering station in Africa where they're able to trade resources. And I think if Black people went over there and took complete control, no one would stand for it. Like it would be a war in a day. And, you know, I come to this question, I'm like, we could, like, I do, in my mind, I don't think we would have to mine as much cobalt just because of the fact of, like, even in Africa, that's not what they do alone. Like, they mine cobalt, but also there's like tons of trash and like technological trash, and they have children going through like old phones trying to take copper wiring out, and it's very dangerous and like it's very terrible. But like that just shows to say that we've taken so much out of the earth. Well, let me not say we. I'm not going to take on the Europeans' crimes, but the Europeans have taken so much out of the earth already that you could just recycle that. But there would be a war. There would be, like, they fight amongst themselves for it. There's going to be a new Arctic war for as many minerals as the global warming has allowed us to grab. So I do think that we would have to confront the status quo in a very real way to say, you know, and I think it would require a new superpower. I think, like Sasha said, it would be African colonialism, not just for the betterment of Black people as a diaspora as a whole, but just for the earth as a whole. Like, I think we would be just calmed down a little bit in terms of the extraction of resources from the earth if we were in control. And that's what would have to happen in that fugitive science like future, or probably what has happened now, but we'll get to that when we get to it.
Yeah, I think like the kind of extraction versus maybe we would call it like balance and a new way of use. I think like that is part of what we're talking about, as like even reframing that is using science in a different way, even coming up with better models of sustainability and ways to like kind of share the energy of the earth with the earth. So I think like definitely to your point, Sasha, like, yeah, we don't have to reconceptualize everything. I agree with Romo that like, I think sometimes I hear like an Afrofuturist spaces, or I'll see like kind of discussion around this stuff that shies away from what I do think is the reality, that it would take some, basically the confrontation would come from what Romo described, us taking control of Africa and saying, people aren't coming here and mining cobalt anymore. The next day they're going to declare war, like, because they have to, because their status quo and system is dependent on that cobalt. Like, so I think, you know, the more major changes, even the more reconceptualizing we do is going to require, or would push even more of that confrontation.
It's already happening in the real world, not with Africa, because we don't have the power to do that. But China tried to, like, and what, depending on whose side you're on, I don't really have a dog in this fight, but China did try to reclaim Taiwan. They're like, Taiwan is our land. It's the part of the Chinese Communist Party, and we don't think it needs to be independent. It needs to work with us. It needs to be our nation again, part of one nation. And America has fought the hardest that I've seen it fight in so long. They care so much about Taiwan because they make all the chips and like the drones and the computers that control the drones and nukes and things of that nature. And if China controls Taiwan, they control those chips, and it's going to be an issue. And it hasn't been a war, like an all-out boots on the ground war yet, but there's been like warning shots and testing, and you know, America just likes to have a fleet of boats and, you know, and aircraft carriers around there just to hang out, you know, like, it's not. And, you know, it's kind of like that guy who cycles your block to see what houses are able to be robbed. Like, and that's just chips. So I can't imagine all the number one metal used in all technology being completely taken out of the conversation for these major nations, and them just being like, you know, we had a good run. Like, that I don't think that ever happened.
I'd even like to think that if we had like a low level, I mean, it wouldn't be low level, like if we just had Black people in America agree to stop sending our kids to these Ivy Leagues, it would be a little bit of a hit, especially in sports. Like the reality is that like we would not have billions of dollars worth of college sports industry without Black people sending their kids into these places of higher learning. So like even just like redirecting our intellectual resources, quote unquote, would disrupt things and probably engender some kind of conflict with them.
And this isn't a like regular world. This isn't counting like, so when we do go deeper into like sci-fi and stuff, this isn't like we're talking about this in like a realistic world. What if we just took away sports? I can't imagine some kid builds an Iron Man suit as like, I'm only going to give it to people in Harlem, and that's not going to create, like a huge international incident.
I kind of would like to like try not to think about the reaction of like the US or the Western Empire in general, because I feel like, yeah, I get what y'all are saying, like, yeah, they will probably be upset in some way, but I think that kind of can put us like in a hole of thinking where we're just, instead of like actually building towards redirecting the energy that we are generating, it's kind of still holding back some energy in order to fight, in order to like defend, which I know that it's necessary, like to defend things. But kind of what I'm saying is like that it at least for me, like in that line of thinking, I kind of think that it can kind of turn into more imperialism. Like we live over here, we live on the United States continent or whatever. We're not necessarily like familiar with Africa or like even living over there. So like going over there to control the resources, like that is kind of like it could be another like form of imperialism.
I think
what if we don't think about like how the US is going to react or how the Western empire is going to react, and more just think like, how do we just redirect our energy, like just here now, like where we're at, right here with the people that we're with, and like the place that our feet is like landing on,
Did you hear that? I think, yeah. Well, real quick, pause real quick. Let's take a 5-minute break.
Okay.
I think it's fine, because I've been throwing so many history facts out that I need to like be able to remember. So I'm gonna write all of that down so I can like get some actual footage in the video.
Yeah. Right now I'm like, words are kind of coming a little difficult to me too. Like, yeah, next time.
Right, the camera. I'm getting distracted by the cameras. Oh, there's so many notes in here. I don't know just the first. This is like I had a great teacher over. I think it was the fall semester. It was the spring semester. My African studies teacher, and he was great. And I was in his class, and I'm using his notebook, just the notebook I used for his class. But I didn't realize how many pages I had gotten done in here.
Looking back and reflecting on it.
Yeah, it's a lot of good stuff. You actually knew what he was talking about. His name is Professor Daniel Davis. I gotta email him because he was supposed to help me with some things. I definitely think, like, I honestly didn't even think about it, about how we kind of just sounded more imperialistic when we were discussing how to control African resources. I'm like, we go there and we control the cobalt, and we tell them you're not allowed to have it without doing it. And my redirection would probably be like, if you have a kid who's a brilliant scientist and he wants to work for an African-owned company, and I think that's why before you can get the STEM, well, I'll talk about it and I'll reiterate, but before you can really get STEM focused, you have to have institutions for that resource to go. Otherwise, it's like I'm a scientist and I would love to work for like a Black-owned science agency or a Black-owned research company, but they don't exist. So I can either just
I would say
do nothing.
we have to reconceptualize what we think of as an institution. Because if you're, I like, it's still recording, so maybe we can, go back. We have to reconceptualize what we think of an institution, because if you're like in your home, your parents recognize that you are, scientifically, like, you have a tendency to be like scientifically minded or whatever. That can be an institution that is nurturing you and your progress in that craft or in that like practice that you're doing, And I feel like we just have that is a way to recapture it and not allow things to be appropriated by these colonial institutions,
I definitely agree, but like this was a topic in Ironheart where it was like, I think her family supported her, but it was a family in like the hoods of Chicago, and so I don't think you guys, like, they're not gonna have the money or the resources to get a fully. So it's like, if I really want to explore these ideas I have, I gotta go to MIT. Now, I think they could have gone to HBCU, gotten a grant. She could have, like, all the things she was writing, she could have gotten an HBCU all that money and all those resources. But even at like, I just went to my campus, Chicago State, and the first thing I noticed was that there were more white people there than I remember, and like signing up for classes and things of that nature. So I'm like, even if we did give all this power to an HBCU, all of a sudden that historically Black school wouldn't be historically Black anymore. So it's like, I think anytime, think about, and we don't even have to just get out of science, think about music. We had the blues, we had rap, we had, for the 90s. And as soon as rap became something popular, here comes Vanilla Ice, Eminem, so I think as soon as we would, even if we did it in like a small area of like, oh, we're going to just have Black people build ourselves up our own, as soon as that became it'd just be gentrification. They just gentrified those institutions as soon as we did that.
Yeah. So I don't know how exactly we'll edit it. Maybe I'll just like keep some of y'all's conversation. I don't know what I'll go into. But
yeah.
I think I would say that, like, I agree with I hear what you're saying, Sasha. Like, I think your point about making sure that we're not in the mindset that we're going to go and take over Africa or control Africa, I think is really the word used that we'd have to be like cognizant of and like really careful about. Like, we can't as Black people born here on Turtle Island think that we should go back to Africa and that we have to run it or control it. I do think, though, Black liberation means the liberation of Africa from the corporations and countries that are controlling it. So I think, like,
the puppet regimes that are instilled over there.
Yeah, I think that's the essence of Pan-Africanism, is that we have to achieve some kind of collective liberation. That I think there is a real danger, though, in the way that our current generation, like, people are talking about going back to Africa and this kind of thing, that, like, I think we need to be careful about, like, because we don't have the right to just go there and control things or dictate to them what the way should be. And yeah, I think a lot of, like, Black capitalism, Black success, Black excellence, a lot of what we're talking about is that idea that, like, okay, we're going to run things the way that we're going to have the same kind of power that white people have, which is like the last thing we want. I do think, though, like, I don't think we can even, I think if we were to start to do things that really affected or harmed them, kind of like Romo's point that I walked in like to, is no matter the scale, I think they're going to attack us because they have already shown that. It just happened over and over. Yeah, that anytime we've tried to do things on our own or to wrest some kind of power, even like within the region, like the story of Haiti is a perfect example of that. Like they were from the very beginning in a bad position and kind of ganged up on by the rest of the powers.
So I'm thinking, and I kind of want to like shift back in to like the fantastical world for a second, because I'm like, in my mind, I'm thinking if it is, and maybe this would be our kind of shift to Ironheart, but this was the first thing that always bugged me about that story, which was she had this huge drive to build something. And it wasn't even like she was trying to build something for people. She was just like, it was a machine. And she like, just like, oh, I want to build an Iron Man suit because Iron Man did it. And she had all these other technological advances, but they were like still late on the electric bill. And that like just that, or they were, you know, like drying clothes in the shitty washer and dryer that came in their unit. Like it just, that part never made sense to me, because I think on top of the fact that like if we do something to the extent of completely rewriting the rules of our current status quo, I think that there's, before we fight like, oh, what are we going to do when we get there, we also have to fight the menticide that doesn't have us there in the first place. Like a lot of black excellence to me is another byproduct of capitalistic individualism. And that's the first fight I believe that black people have to fight against before we're like, I build this great, like the idea of like, oh, I built this great machine, I deserve to profit off of it, I deserve to, like, that's all of these capitalistic ideas rather than, and I think that's 9 times out of 10, like we're thinking of all these times like, oh, the American government and the Russians and all these other people would immediately attack us, but I think before that happens, you usually have the menticide stopping them from thinking this way in the first place.
All right, African world. That was episode 6, Us versus STEM, Fugitive Science or Black Excellence. We will be back next week with another episode of the Cosmic Cowrie Shellcast. In the meantime, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Peace.